Hi, everyone. I had the top of the hour. I'd like to get started. My name is Mike Mason. I'm the Manager of Leadership Development. Welcome to the August edition of the DPM Webinar Series. The topic today is professional development training. So you may note that we did do some shuffling of the topics for July and August. They were previously scheduled to be career development and goals for July and mentorship program for this month. And we ended up broadening the topics a bit. All of the subject matter is covered in the combination of these two, but we shuffled around the titles just a little bit to ensure that we had some better coverage. With that, let's get into some ground rules and introductions for today's webinar. So you'll note that our WebEx today is being recorded. The purpose of this is to post the recorded version on the Region and Chapter Program Leadership Toolkit, along with the PowerPoint slide deck that we're using today, so that you all may go back and reference it, and for folks who weren't or aren't able to join today's WebEx, they can view it at their leisure. Please mute your line and disable your webcam or your video. We have done that for all lines. However, we will hopefully have some time to open up the lines for questions at the end, and we want to make sure that as much as possible people keep their own lines muted and video turned off to limit distraction. So regarding questions, we do as much as possible want to use the chat window to ask questions. We will handle any and all questions at the end, but please feel free to type them into the chat window whenever you get a chance or whenever it comes to mind. Hopefully we will have some time at the end for some questions. And then, like I said, also hopefully we'll have some time to open up the lines for phone questions. If we don't, we will still address all questions either by email or by typing up the answers in a sort of an FAQ and posting them with the slide deck when it goes up on the toolkit. So again, my name is Mike Mason. I am the Manager of Leadership Development as part of the Training and Development team at Disaster Cycle Services at National Headquarters. Also, our co-facilitator today is Jay Turner, Senior Consultant with Talent and Organizational Development in the Human Resources Department. I'm going to be passing it to Jay for the second half of the presentation today. So let's move right on. So we'll talk briefly about the objectives that we want to accomplish today, and then we'll get into our content. I'll be talking about disaster training and experience, the continuum of learning, and some third-party training, and then I'll be passing it to Jay to talk about the People Management Development Program, or PMDP. And then, like I said, we'll hopefully have some time for questions. So at the end of today's WebEx, what we're hoping that you all will get out of this is to understand the role of disaster training in skill and leader development of an individual, to increase the awareness and understanding of DCS training support tools, including the continuum of learning, to know and be able to access available third-party training and other resources, understand the purpose and curriculum-based structure of the PMDP, recognize 3 methods of PMDP program participation for supervisors and volunteers, and identify PMDP help resources. So with that, let's get into our first content section today. We'll talk about disaster professional development training. So delivering quality and standardized training to the disaster workforce is really the key to providing excellent services to those affected by a disaster. So training that's offered by the regions provides our disaster workers with program guidance information, including roles, tasks, responsibilities, and methods of service delivery to enable our workforce to, of course, prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. So the regional DCS training program supports the region's efforts to build and maintain an employee and volunteer team to meet the needs of the community, to initiate and provide emergency response services in any disaster within the affected region, and to assist in responding to disasters that occur in other regions when needed or when called upon. So this is accomplished by providing training that is just in time, just enough, and delivered just the right way. And we do have more information on exactly what that means, just in time, just enough, and delivered just the right way, on the DCS training topic hub on the Exchange as well. So most of our training in disaster cycle services is focused on group activities and positions. So at the root of this, most DCS training is based on doctrine. The process owners, subject matter experts develop the doctrine, which is the guidance for how something is accomplished. And then we provide the training to support that doctrine to enable someone to be able to accomplish those tasks. So the training supports skill development for groups, activities, and positions. And of course, promotions within group activity and positions include some requirements for training for each level of promotion, as well as some recommendations. So many of you may be familiar with the group activity position competency and training worksheets, which have been around for a few years and have had various updates over the last couple of years. However, these are being totally updated right now. It's actually part of the Readiness Initiative Trained People pilot. However, these documents are being updated as part of the pilot. However, as soon as they're updated, which will be this summer, they will be released and published for everyone, not just the regions that are in the Trained People pilot. So look for those soon. They'll be built in to and part of the Volunteer Connection position descriptions, which will include training requirements and recommendations, of course, as well as competencies and physical capacities and descriptions for every group, activity, and position. We'll also have a consolidated document called the Learning Paths Matrix that will be a one-stop snapshot for all of those training and competency requirements. So with the training comes disaster experience and exercises. So experience on disasters is really a key factor for skill and leader development. And disaster experience should include varying scope, type, and location. So what we mean by that is that there is incredible value to be had in going or in responding to a, let's say, level 2 disaster in your own chapter or region. However, it's different from a level 4 disaster that might be outside of your division. And whenever possible, to increase an individual's development, we want them to try to do all kinds of different deployments and gain disaster experience with different size disasters, different types of hazards, and in different geographic locations. So we also recognize that that's not always possible for a number of different reasons that are within and outside of somebody's control. And so when that's not possible, and to supplement the experience that you can gain, we have exercises. Exercises are a great opportunity, like I said, to add an additional element, an additional experiential element to somebody's development. This spring, we published a very extensive exercise resources SharePoint site that offers templates for building exercises, resources for scheduling and designing, as well as a pretty extensive library of existing and historical exercises. So on the next slide here, this is a screenshot only of the exercise library. So the intent here isn't that you can read everything on your screen, but it shows you what that library looks like. So on the library, we have a pretty extensive list of exercises. These are ones that were designed and executed by folks at national headquarters and peers and leaders all over the Red Cross network. You can look for an exercise or a type of exercise and sort by the date that it was designed, by the primary activity that exercise supports, the type of exercise, so whether it's a tabletop, a functional, a full scale, the scope, if it addresses a chapter, region, division, or in some cases partner exercises, the type of disaster, the type of hazard it is, and you can also see if it meets HSEAT standards. That's FEMA's Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program, as well as see if it has been validated by subject matter experts within the Red Cross. It's a really comprehensive list of resources, and the intent here is that these are for you, for everyone in the field, to use how you wish. That could mean downloading one and replacing the region or chapter name with your own and using it. Or it could mean just using it as a foundation for building or designing your own new exercise. Because of course, not only are the historical ones there as an example, but we have templates and whatnot also. So the exercise library is part of the Disaster Workforce Readiness SharePoint site. It is also linked to on the Region and Chapter Program Leadership Toolkit, as well as the Disaster Cycle Services training page. Okay. So let's talk, we talked before about training specific to groups, activities, and positions. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about training specifically for program managers, for DPSs, DPMs, senior DPMs, RDOs. So a program manager, of course, may have skills in a certain gap. Regardless of that, all should have a basic understanding of and training in operations management. So program management training, what does that mean? Well, it should include some DCS skills training. So that's like operations management training like ConOps or ops planning, or it could be other gap training like mass care or logistics or whatever that program manager wants to explore for skill training. It should also include DCS program and leader training, like the newly released Disaster Program Management Fundamentals course, the Disaster Frontline Supervisor, Fundamentals of Chapter Disaster Operations Management, courses like that. It should also include general disaster training, so outside of DCS, like FEMA training. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And should also include general leadership training, so outside of disaster emergency management, like the People Management Development Program that Jay will talk about in a little bit. So there's a lot of other resources for program managers that are included on the Region and Chapter Program Leadership Toolkit on the Exchange. These include doctrine, an onboarding guide for DPMs, competency profile self-assessment, a document highlighting key elements for a successful regional disaster program, and the continuum of learning, which we're going to talk about next. So the continuum of learning is a set of time-based guidelines and recommendations for training and other resources for program managers, including RDOs, senior DPMs, DPMs, and DPSs, and volunteer counterparts. It starts when the program manager first begins his or her position and continues throughout their career. It includes self-study courses and resources, instructor-led training, third-party training, and continuing education. And it is also located on the Region and Chapter Program Leadership Tool. The next slide here, this is just a screenshot of part of the continuum of learning. It's a pretty comprehensive document. It also includes a backside. So the intent here is not for you to be able to read the entire thing on this slide, just a screenshot reminder of what it looks like. I encourage folks, if you don't have it printed out, or if you haven't reviewed it, to go to the Region Chapter Program Leadership Toolkit and download a copy of it. It was updated as part of the spring release of Disaster Program Management Fundamentals. So if you haven't seen it since late March, then again, I'd encourage you to download a copy. So as I mentioned, on the continuum of learning, there's a lot of different things. And one of the things that we want to emphasize is the availability of third-party training. So, you know, a training program and an individual's development includes a lot of DCS offerings, but also a lot of non-DCS things. This includes courses by volunteer services, human resources, also our external partners like FEMA and disasterready.org. So we ideally want to integrate these offerings into a coordinated and seamless training plan, and that's what the continuum of learning attempts to do. So first we'll talk about FEMA training a little bit. So FEMA offers free leadership, disaster, and emergency management courses that support program management skill development. They have independent study, which are web-based courses. They have field-based courses that are offered by local and state EMA, and they have resident courses at their campus in Emmitsburg, Maryland. All of these courses, of course, are free. They require applications, and in many cases, they require you to provide your travel to get there, but we encourage you to work within your region or division, or even in some cases your partners, to try to mitigate those costs. We recommend a lot of key courses through FEMA, namely the National Incident Management System, which is a series of basic ICS courses, 100, 200, 700, and 800. They also have a really good professional development series. as well as their intermediate and advanced incident command system courses. That's ICS 300 and 400. So another third-party training resource is disasterready.org. So disasterready.org is an international learning portal that provides our disaster workers, among others, with free access to an online learning catalog of about 500 self-paced courses and some webinars as well. So the Red Cross has a co-branded portal specifically with Disaster Ready, and we, through that, we can offer free accounts to all DCS volunteers, employees, and partners. So these e-learning courses are relevant to disaster workers, including, and this is just a selection of their catalog, becoming a manager coach, dealing with time-consuming tasks, essential skills for new managers, writing effectively, and a ton more. So there is more information on disasterready.org on our disaster training topic hub, but the site itself is an external site where you can explore their library and take the classes. The last third-party training that I'm going to talk about today is the International Federation of the Red Cross, or the IFRC. IFRC has a learning education training, or LET, hub where Red Cross workers can access, again, free online self-directed courses. So the LET hub supports individuals and organizations with lifelong learning. It stimulates new thinking, sets new standards, establishes a range of curricula that are relevant to the movement's core business areas and beyond. And of course, the American Red Cross is part of the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. So they have about 125 online courses that cover a variety of topics, including Red Cross and Red Crescent training, personal development, and professional development. IFRC, similar to disasterready.org, there is information about it on our exchange, on the disaster training topic hub. However, it is an external site, and exploring the catalog and taking the classes occurs on their IFRC website. So I talked a lot about disaster-specific training and some of our third-party training. I'm now going to pass it to Jay, who's going to talk about the People Manager Development Program and how that fits into our professional development training as well. So Jay, I've unmuted your line. It's all yours.
Hey, thanks for that, Mike, and thanks you all for having me here for a few minutes to talk today about the People Manager Development Program. It's an initiative that I am personally very excited about. Had an opportunity to be one of the leads on this project and work with several members from different business units and departments across the Red Cross to really get this thing off the ground. So, Mike, if you would go ahead and head over to the next slide, let's talk a little bit about what is the PMDP. So the PMDP, for many of you on the phone who may know, it launched on May 16th with an email that went out to about 3,100 people managers who are classified in managers and Workday. And I just want to just tell you right now to hang your hat on the word managers and Workday, or as you might call Workday Red Cross at Work, because this is going to be a very important distinction for all of you on the phone in just a few minutes. But the basic purpose of the PMDP, for us really, it's all about developing great leaders in the organization to boost manager effectiveness and to improve our employee engagement and ultimately to strengthen our overall organizational performance. So when you think about the program's three goals, they are really intended to develop what I call the core and critical skills of being an effective manager. And then second, the program supports our overall engagement strategy. And you know that engagement is so important to us as an org. And then finally, the PMDP really increases our overall capacity to provide management and leadership development to the larger enterprise, to all of our staff, both paid and volunteer. So, Mike, if you go ahead and go for it for us. The thing is, we know that research shows that people who report to managers who are more effective at development, they have about 25% higher performance levels. I think it's 40% higher retention levels and almost 30% higher commitment levels than people who report to managers who are ineffective at development. So when you look at these business drivers on the screen and you think about those three goals that I just mentioned on the previous slide, it was with all of that in mind that Gail and her senior leadership team called for us to really implement this people manager development program. Now, the PMDP is required for people managers at all levels in the organization, and the coursework is really designed for our participants to complete over a 2-year period. When we start talking about the framework on the next slide here, when we start talking about the framework of the PMDP, I know that a lot of you will recall our learning management system, EDGE, because I know that disaster, you all are huge users of this system. But we are relying on EDGE to be the delivery engine for administering the PMDP. And coursework is going to be assigned to our participants based on their management level in Red Cross at Work. Remember, we mentioned that, the courses, the curriculum, they're all assigned based on management level and workday. And so what we have is that these individual courses that are inside of the program, they are structured into 4 curricula, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But when I think about the management and leadership skills that the Red Cross need to propel us forward, these skills aren't static, right? These are things that are going to grow and change over time. So we've made it a point to design the PMDP in such a way that it can also evolve with the business needs and the objectives of the Red Cross over time. The program itself is designed to also complement things like individual development planning, IDP as we call it, succession planning, is meant to complement what we do with the LEAD program, and also other development initiatives. And so what I like to encourage people to do is I like to encourage participants in the program and their managers to constantly talk about not only attending PMDP courses, but really talk about how does the PMDP program complement the different operational training that's available inside of your business unit or your department. And I know that disaster has several initiatives that go on around managerial and leadership training. So part of your conversation should be, how can the PMDP complement what we're doing that's specific to disaster? On the next slide, we look at the 4 tracks inside of our program. So we're looking at the way that we have all these courses laid out. They are mapped into 4 tiers of curricula that really do reinforce those management and leadership skills that are needed at 4 levels of the organization. And you can see these 4 levels laid out for you on the screen here in those stair steps. There are, that pre-supervisor level, the supervisor level, the manager/director, and then finally the executive. When we talk about the expectations of our leadership believes that the coursework inside of these 4 curricula are what's called the minimal developmental standards required for each level of management. So, we really do want to see our supervisors completing their supervisory tier curricula because that's core and critical for being a supervisor. And likewise, we want to see our managers and directors completing their curricula because the coursework in there is also, again, core and critical for where they are. So let's talk a minute about curriculum assignment on the next screen. So I've alluded to a couple of times that PMDP coursework is automatically assigned based on management level that's indicated for each employee inside of Red Cross at Work, or Workday, again, as some people call it. So coursework is automatically assigned based on your management level inside of Red Cross at Work. Now, I want to make a couple distinctions here because this plays out, we see quite a bit inside of disaster. So a couple notes here. For individuals who manage employees in disaster, you've most likely, or we'll say unequivocally, been assigned a curriculum. So if you are a person who manages an employee in disaster, you've been assigned a curriculum. Now, for individuals who manage only volunteers, inside of Workday, you are considered an individual contributor, and so you will not have been assigned a curriculum. So even though we know that managing a volunteer, is de jure management, but inside of our Red Cross at Work system, if you manage only volunteers, you're classified as an individual contributor. So that means that you were not automatically assigned a PMDP curriculum. But I am the bearer of good news, as I like to be. There are several ways that if you manage only volunteers or volunteers exclusively, you can still participate inside the PMDP. And then so just a minute, I'm going to tell you 3 options for how you can do that if your job revolves around managing solely volunteers. Now, to talk about the way curriculum are assigned for people who manage other employees, if you look at the table on the right, you'll see that the names of the curriculum don't necessarily correlate directly to a job title. And another thing that I want to call out here, too, with the way that curricula are assigned, is if you have been assigned a curriculum inside of the PMDP program, and let's say you start off as a supervisor, but then you take a role that bumps you up from that supervisor tier to the manager/director tier, I want you to know that your progress with the work that you're doing inside of the supervisor tier is going to carry over into that manager/director curriculum. You will see on the next screen in just a moment that some of the classes in one curriculum are shared with the next curriculum, but the next curriculum has some additional items in it. So what this means for you is if you were working on, say, let's say you completed 4 manager essential modules inside of your supervisor curriculum, if you were promoted to be a manager, and then your manager curriculum also required that you complete 4 manager essentials curriculum, well, guess what? The 4 that you did as a supervisor, that progress is going to carry over into your curriculum as a manager, and you won't have to do those classes again. So the coursework, completions, and the progress carries over between tiers. Mike, if you go over to the next screen, just want to lay out what the curriculum looks like over the course of 2 years for some folks. So the biggest thing here is just I want to call out that participants in the PMDP, you should, again, be actively talking with your manager so that you can make sure that you have enough time to build into your schedule the ability to complete your requisite coursework over 2 years. The last thing that we want to happen as an organization, and also the last thing that you want to happen is, things get so busy and then you're having to wait until, say, the last 3, 4, or 5 months trying to get all of this work in. And I can tell you that it's probably going to be virtually impossible to do that if you wait until the last minute. So what you want to do is just make sure that you're being proactive, you're working with your manager, you're looking at the national schedule that we publish and that we'll publish consistently, and making sure that you are able to attend the classes that you need to fulfill your curriculum requirements, spread out, of course, over 2 years. Mike, if you hop over to the next screen, just want to look at just a quick comparison between 2 different curriculum. What you're seeing here on the screen is at the top, you see like the manager/director curriculum, and then in the bottom half of that screen, you see the executive curriculum. And so I just want to kind of point out, like some similarities and differences. So let's start with that manager-director. So we know if you're looking at that one on the top half of the screen, that manager/director is going to be required to complete 9 instructor-led courses and then 10 self-paced online courses for a total of 43 hours. You can schedule those courses at your own convenience, and ideally, anything that has to be completed face-to-face, say True Colors or Crucial Conversations, if you're looking at scheduling that out over 2 years, you can make sure that a class like Crucial Conversations or True Colors, you're taking that when it's in your backyard so that you can minimize travel expense. Now, if you're looking at the executive curriculum on the second half of the screen here, you'll notice that there's a similar number of sessions and, relatively close to the same number of hours to complete, but you'll see that there are some different courses assigned to that tier. So you see that some of the courses are similar, True Colors and Crucial Conversations being in both tiers. But then you see in the executive tier, there are some additional things, right, like doing a Voices 360 assessment. So I just wanted to point out how the coursework can look similar yet different between curricula. All right, so what does this all have to do with you? So let's talk specifically about how DPMs and DPSs can participate in the PMDP. So Mike, on this upcoming screen we have here, I want to just walk through how you can connect with this amazing program. So again, DPMs and DPSs, we know that these positions are classified as individual contributors in Workday. Even though they often manage people, again, this goes back to if you're managing solely volunteers, you're still classified as an individual contributor in Workday, and hence you didn't have a curriculum automatically assigned. So what we're doing here is just kind of talking through what are my options? How can I be a part of the PMDP? So I want to give you 3 ways. The first way is if you want an official PMDP curriculum assigned to you, you can go through our pre-supervisor curriculum. And I'm going to talk through on the next slide, how do you get that curriculum assigned to you? But we'll talk through that specifically in just a moment. But yeah, you can request to take the pre-supervisor curriculum. And then if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you see that there's a volunteer supervisor curriculum. This is also another curriculum that we have inside of the PMDP that you can complete. And this is a relatively new addition to the program. It just launched on July 19th, but we're super excited about it. But what has happened is Volunteer Services has put together a curriculum of 9 virtual classes, and it's all about working with and supervising volunteers. And the great part about it is it covers a lot of the competencies that we have discussed inside of the PMD program, but these classes are all virtual, and so there's no travel costs associated with it. And plus, it gives a little bit more flexibility into completing some of that work. So that's another option if you want to have a PMDP curriculum assigned. You can just go into Edge right now. You can do it tomorrow. You can do it today when you get off the call. You can just look up Volunteer Supervisor Curriculum and enroll in it. There's no approval process, and you'll be able to see the 9 classes that are inside of it. And then the last way that you can get involved with the PMDP is right there in the middle. It's really just cherry picking the courses. So on our PMDP Topic Hub, we have a document. It's a PMDP guidebook, and it lists all the courses that are associated with each curriculum. And so what you could do is you could look at that guidebook, or you can hop directly in Edge and just start searching for PMDP courses. And you can cherry pick the ones that seem most appropriate to you for your professional development and or the needs of your department. And so what I recommend is if you know that you need to take a course like Crucial Conversations, and let's say that you're doing some supervisory work, you realize that you're needing to have some challenging conversations with, a paid employee and or a volunteer, and you think that Crucial Conversations might fit the bill, then there's nothing wrong with like going to your manager, talking through, hey, we have Crucial Conversations coming up next month. It's located just 20 miles from here. I would like to attend. You and your manager say, hey, that's great. She signs off when you're going, and you go attend Crucial Conversations. And you can do the same thing with other PMDP courses. So that option exists too. The beauty of these 3 ways of participating in the PMDP, even if you weren't assigned the curriculum, is that the classes inside of the PMDP, they're not constrained by a curriculum. The curriculum is pretty much just a container to help it be, neat and structured for your managerial level. However, if there's something that you see that's in another curriculum and you and your manager have a conversation about it, and if it fits your professional development needs and the needs of your work unit, then by all means, if you get approval for it, sign up. We won't stop you. The more the merrier. So let's talk about getting that official PMDP curriculum assigned to you, that pre-supervisor curriculum. If you want to do that, how do you get it? So, Mike, if you look on the net screen, I just want to talk through how do you get assigned this pre-supervisor curriculum. So I like to think of, getting that access as like a 5-tiered cake, and we talk about it from the bottom up. So the pre-supervisor curriculum, we think, is a really good choice for people who, while we might be individual contributors, I know that I am, even in my role, but for people who are often put in charge of other people, folks who lead projects, people who are program managers, folks who have to work with and through other people and influence them to do work but have no direct supervisory authority over them, the pre-supervisor curriculum is really good for this. So if this sounds like it might fit your cup of tea, there's a process that we go through, and it all starts at the very bottom, that red tier. It's having an individual development discussion with your manager. It's talking through, who is this pre-supervisor curriculum for? It's looking at the PMDP guidebook and taking a look at what courses are included in it. And you and your manager have a conversation and determine, does this curriculum seem like the right fit for me? And if the answer is yes, then you go to fill out an enrollment form to get into this. What I like about the pre-supervisor selection process, and I want to emphasize selection, is because no one has to nominate you for this. If you think that this is a good fit for you, you can talk to your manager about it. If your manager is looking at you and your professional development and the needs of your department, and your manager says, hey, you know what, Mike, I think you'd be a good fit for this, your manager can select you for this. If you have an HR business partner who's out there and they happen to think that this might be good for you, they can also say, hey, Mike, you know what, from afar, it looks like this might be good for you. Why don't you give it a shot? So anyone can be selected into this. That's what I want you to know. So you don't have to be nominated. You can select in, whether it's yourself or someone else. So you have that development discussion. You all determine if this is the right thing for you. The next step is going up to that orange layer. It is filling out the pre-supervisor curriculum enrollment form. This form is online. It's pretty short and simple. You can just search for it by that name inside of our PMDP topic hub. You will fill out some very basic information like your name, your address. If you are an employee, you would give us your employee ID number. Conversely, if you are a volunteer, you give us your volunteer connection number. We'll ask for things like your manager's email address, etc. And then at the bottom of the form, you click the box that just says, my manager and I agree that we want such and such to enroll in the pre-supervisor selection into the pre-supervisor curriculum. You hit submit, and then on the back end, boom, we go up to the first green level. Folks on my team, we get the request that you want to be put into this curriculum. And, every 2 weeks, we will review all those requests, and we will put you manually into the pre-supervisor curriculum inside of EDGE. Just want you to know that we're a very small team. We get a lot of requests. So it can take up to 10 business days before, between the time you hit submit and the time that the training appears inside of your EDGE transcript. But we're working on it. It just takes about 2 weeks. And then lastly, we like to keep HR notified as to everyone inside of the curriculum. So on a monthly basis, we make sure that they are aware of all the folks who are inside of our pre-supervisor curriculum. It's just that easy. So my guess now is that you're probably wondering, how is the PMDP overall different than what we've done in the past? So, Mike, I just want to talk just a little bit about how is this approach different. And if you look at the net screen, the PMDP is different from our former strategies because I think that historically we've done a good job developing staff, but those efforts have often been kind of sporadic or catch as catch can or responding to a special request. But with this, right, I really believe that our organization We exist in this time of permanent whitewater, where change is persistent, it's pervasive, it's paradigm busting, and so we have to be able to be responsive as leaders to like all these changes in our environment. And the PMDP really positions us to do that. And plus, from a timing perspective, it just seems right. We have EDGE in place. It's our delivery engine, so we can really administer this program for the entire enterprise using and leveraging technology that we already have. So inside of the PMDP, there's a really special place for managers, and we'll talk through this on the upcoming slide. And the PMDP, as it becomes really integrated into our culture, we just recognize that managers have a really critical role in the way they support people who are participating inside of the program. So, you know, we're going to be more systematically relying on managers to help prepare learners for participating in training events, and then also following up afterwards and being debriefing, because we know that managers are a vital cog inside of the process of making sure that learning that happens in the classroom, that it gets applied back into the workplace, whether it's through stretch assignment or practice or finding special opportunities. We know that the manager plays a key role there. The other thing that's really important about the PMDP on the next slide is that it's based around this 70-20-10 model. We have a tendency, I think, to get, when we think about like development strategies, we focus so much on the formal learning. It's the classroom events, it's the webinars, it's the e-learning, it's the required reading. And while those things are important to a development strategy, they're not everything. But what we know from research is that 70% of development occurs every day on the job. Hands-on experience, whether it's being successful at something on the job, whether it's failing at it miserably, whether it's having a stretch assignment or being exposed to a new role, 70% of what we learn by doing. And then the 20% of what we learn, it comes through developmental relationships. We learn so much through other people, whether it's through coaching and mentoring from our manager, or even just the social learning that we get by having conversations and talking through things with our peers and our own collegial networks. And then lastly, the smallest sliver of that pie is the formal learning. It is the classes, it's the webinars, it's the reading. Only 10% of learning occurs that way. So we've intentionally designed the PMDP, even though the curriculum themselves focus on this 10% piece, the formal learning. I just want to call out that there's so much more that we are kind of building into this and augmenting with those informal practices. And that's really encouraging people to apply the learning on the job. And it's also inviting managers to be more proactive as coaches and mentors as people participate in the program. So we know that we're asking a bit of our managers. On the next slide, I just want to talk about a resource that we have available. If you are a manager on this call and you have people who will likely be participating in the PMDP, strongly encourage you to look up this People Manager Development Toolbox. There's a lot of information in here about the 70-20-10 model and ways that we can be supportive to our learners while they're in the program. But the one thing that I really want to call out is that even though there's a big role here for managers, the ultimate responsibility for learning comes down to, guess who? You, the learner. Every person is responsible for their own development, and so they should be being proactive about seeking out a manager for coaching and support. So in other words, what I'm really trying to say is that all stakeholders, whether it's the managers, whether it's staff members, whether it's HR folks like me or Red Cross leadership, in each of our own unique ways, we all have some responsibility for ensuring that this program is successful. So we are really encouraging everybody to work together and support each other's participation in the program, because we know that organizations with a learning culture competes more effectively than organizations that don't have one. So as I wrap up the day, I just want to talk a little bit about the commitment that Red Cross leadership has made about this program. So leadership is excited about this, and we've committed in several ways. There's a commitment to really living the 70-20-10 model. There's a commitment to making sure that people have time allocated to engage in the program. We're also making sure that there's the requisite funding inside of budgets to support and implement the PMDP, such as covering travel expenses if necessary. We're also holding managers accountable for coaching and mentoring program participants, and then even doing the boring stuff like, you know, as an organization, making sure that people are participating in effectiveness surveys so that we can benchmark and really know the progress and effectiveness of this program. I know that in the last 22 minutes, 17 seconds, I've covered a whole lot of stuff, but I just want to let you know that there's a myriad of resources out there. So if I kept referencing the PMDP Topic Hub, that's where I would start first and foremost. Almost everything I've talked about on this call today, you can find there. Things that I think might be of interest to you would be our intro video. We have an overview brochure of the program itself. If you're wondering, hey, what are all the courses in the PMDP? What's their descriptions? What competencies do they hit? Boom, we've got that too. We have that manager's toolbox. So there's a whole lot of stuff out there to support you as you really begin your journey into engaging with the PMDP, and also evangelizing this either to yourself or the people that you work with. The last thing I want to put out there is just knowing that, as with anything, you might have times where you need to turn and look for help. And on the upcoming screen here, the mic already has, we have some support options for you. First and foremost, we do have that PMDP Topic Hub. So if you need general information about the program or guidance or resources just about the PMDP itself, the Topic Hub is the place to start. If you're one of those people like me who like to extend the classroom and talk about their experiences in the program, or ask questions or have comments that you want to crowdsource to the group at large, you can use Yammer. We've been getting quite a bit of traction with our Yammer community. It's not one that just sits out there and is totally dead. So if you want to share your PMDP experiences, or if you just have generalized questions that you want to put out there to the group, Yammer's the place to do it. I can also tell you that my team monitors that consistently, and we all get emails whenever a comment's posted, so we watch that steadfastly. And then lastly, if you have any questions about the PMDP that relate specifically to you and they're unique to your situation, you can always hit us at the Talent Systems mailbox. That is talentsystems@redcross.org. Either myself or one of my colleagues will answer you, and we really try to stick to our commitment of responding in 24 hours or less. So I know that I covered a whole lot. I'm over here almost gasping for air trying to get this whole into 25 minutes. So while I take a swig of some seltzer water, I think we could just open the floor up for questions. Mike, I think we have, 6-7 minutes left for that?
Yeah, thank you, Jay. So that was a lot of material that we went through pretty quickly. So we do have a handful of questions in the chat window, and I'm going to go through those right now. If we have time at the end, again, I'll open the phone lines for questions, but I really encourage folks to type it into the chat window if you do have questions, if you do have a question, as we're more likely to get to it that way. Also, again, if we don't get to all the questions in the chat window, we will answer them and put it on like the last slide of this slide deck before we post it to the region and chapter program leadership toolkit, which should be by the end of this week. You should see this slide deck and the recording of this webinar posted on there. So I'm going to go through the questions that we have in the order that we received them so far, and hopefully we get to them all. So this first question is regarding the change in the gap competencies. The question is, will there be an opportunity to grandfather longtime volunteers into various roles, or will they be required to go back and take any new competency training? So, so the short answer is yes, absolutely. This is actually an entire another webinar dedicated to this topic that you can find more information about on the EVE toolkit. That's the Engage Volunteers and Employees toolkit on the Exchange. But the short answer is that with the new GATS, yes, everyone will be crosswalked into the equivalent role. And while we, of course, want people to take new training for certain roles as it comes out, they will not have to retake any old training that they've already taken. Next question, where can we find the exercise library? I think I already answered this, but I will say it again. It is on the Disaster Cycle Services SharePoint sites, which you can access via your Office 365. There is also a link to it on the Disaster Training Topic Hub on the Exchange. Next question, how can we get DPMF? That's the Disaster Program Management Fundamentals course. I looked in Edge and it's not available anywhere. So it's a new course, and it's a pretty in-depth and hard to offer one because it's 2.5 days. It requires travel and a lot of logistics. We've had 4 offerings so far across the country. But this is something that the division leadership will schedule and offer at their discretion, and when they have the people and the ability to do it. So if you're looking for a DPMF course, I would encourage you to let your region and division leadership know. And as they get enough people, the hope is that they will be able to schedule one as appropriate. The course information, the course itself is in Edge, and there's a lot of information, including a fact sheet and the course materials for it on the training index, which is part of the disaster training page on the Exchange. Okay. A couple questions now regarding PMDP. So Jay, these next few will be for you. So actually, I think the next 2 questions are connected. So I'm gonna read them both and then pass it to you, Jay. So the first is a statement that not all disaster staff that manage paid staff were assigned a PMDP curriculum. None of my DPMs were assigned the curriculum, and I ended up assigning them trainings individually. So the next question that I think is maybe connected is the last time I looked, you're classified as an individual contributor if you manage 1 or 0 employees. So a DPM who only manages a DPS is still classified as an individual contributor. Please advise if this is correct or not.
So I would say that both those questions are probably best answered by an HR business partner. I know that I specifically cannot answer the second one as far as what constitutes who's classified as an individual contributor. That's more on the workday side of the house, which I have, just being completely transparent here, 0 experience with. The second piece is, I think the question was that someone had several DPMs who were not automatically assigned a PMDP curriculum. I have a spreadsheet of several, what we call kind of unicorns, so to speak, and it contained tons of DPMs. And when I looked over into their workday classifications, they were all classified as individual contributors. So what I would advise would be, taking advantage, and it sounds like this person already did, taking advantage of the different options for getting those individuals PMDP courses. Of course, there's always the other possibility of what you could do if you really wanted to address this on a workday side, which again has to be taken care of on an individual basis. You could speak with your HR business partner about the potentiality of having the management level of a DPM change from an individual contributor to a manager. But that would be something that I personally wouldn't advise because I think there was like some FLSA standardization a few years ago before I even got to the Red Cross. I'm personally hesitant to touch that, but that is something that you are definitely at liberty to speak with your HR business partner about. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Jay. So we are, and that also brings us to the end of our time here today. So my apologies, as we do have a handful of other questions that we're not going to be able to get to on the phone on the webinar today. But like I said, we will add a slide to the end of this slide deck and answer the questions that we have remaining in the chat window and put them on that slide before we post this slide deck to the Exchange, along with, of course, the recorded version of this webinar. So with that, I'd like to first thank Jay Turner for joining us from the TOD team. Jay, thank you so much for your expertise and your time and what you continue to do to support our training and development. And I would also like to thank our participants today for your time and your patience and your willingness to join these webinars. And I do hope that you all continue to get value out of them. And with that, I hope to talk to everyone on September's webinar. So thank you so much and have a great day.